Looking back, what do you think you had, or what kind of environment was it around you that kind of pushed you to want to innovate, want to create?
I think it's just an insatiable curiosity as to how things work. And you know, if it's something as simple as flipping on a light switch, it always amazes me how few people actually know what's going on when you do that. And you know, for me, it was just, you know, constantly curious about everything. So I used to go around with my little wagon when I was a kid and collect radios that people were throwing away on trash collection day, and come home, take the radios apart, figure out how to make them produce feedback and all kinds of weird squeals. I think that's the nature of entrepreneurs in general, which is that you know, you're always curious about, you know, what's on that next page. You're always anxious to sort of peel the onion back and get to the next layer. Innovation doesn't just sort of pop up out of nowhere. You don't just sort of wake up one day and boom, you've got this idea. It's always a matter of seeing this thing over here and seeing this thing over here and finding a novel connection between them. You know, having determined that I was never going to make a living as a composer, I went on to grad school in engineering and then dropped out of that to start my first company, which was ARP, the synthesizer company. Bear in mind that the customers for synthesizers in 1970 were mostly university electronic music studios, and they were mostly used to create avant-garde compositions. You know, one day the light went on, and I said, you know, if we could make these cheap enough and simple enough, we could sell these things to high school rock bands through music stores. And that's when that's how the ARP 2600 really came about. It was a little bit of a, well, if a big one for $20,000 is good for a university, maybe a small one would be good for a high school, and also maybe for a band. When the Odyssey was being made, we had a factory out in Lexington. And you know, every day when I would drive out 93 to go to work, I'd listen to the radio, and I kind of would measure how many songs did I hear between home and work that had an ARP on them. And you know, that number kept growing and growing until disco finally arrived, and then it was almost every tune. And now when I look back at it, you know, in hindsight, we really changed the sound of popular music. I like the mass market stuff. So, you know, when I went into the backup business at Carbonite 8 or 10 years ago, I wanted to see millions of PCs backed up on Carbonite. I didn't want to see 10, you know? And it's not just the money, it's the fact that you want to go out and see the results, see the impact that you make in the world. And so that's why it's so important for me to be able to walk into a Holiday Inn in Cleveland, Ohio, and the house band is playing an ARP synthesizer. That's great, you know? And the way you get that is you get Pete Townsend or Stevie Wonder or, you know, Joe Zawinul or somebody to endorse your product, because when the high school rock band goes out and decides what synthesizer they're going to get, they're going to buy the one that people that they love are playing. The whole music industry, obviously, is still to this day very much a trend kind of business. And I actually had developed a piece of software for my Apple II computer that allowed me to input all kinds of data from Billboard and track what was going on in different parts of the country. And I used this to help me spot emerging trends in the music world so that I could go after artists who were on the up and coming. I remember I had a venture capitalist in my office to try to raise money for ARP, and he wasn't interested in that, but he was really curious about this software I had running on this Apple II computer that showed all these charts and graphs and stuff. And I said, I call this thing TrendSpotter because it helps me see what's going on. He says, that's awesome. He said, I'll give you $1 million to seed a company to commercialize that software. Wow. So sometimes luck just happens, you know. What I like about living in a city, and what I like a lot about Boston too, is if you stand on the street corner, metaphorically, if you stand on the street corner and watch the opportunities go by, you'll find something. You know, that's what's so great about an environment like Berkeley. I mean, I so envy you guys being here, interacting with all these other great musicians and the talent that comes. Imagine if you were back in some small town somewhere where you didn't have an opportunity to meet all the great guitar players and the keyboard players and the composers and the, you know, I mean, it would be a different world. And so the opportunities will pass in front of you, if you've got your eyes open, you can seize them. Keep your eyes open.